Sophie, welcome to Podcastina.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to talk to you. We were talking off camera a little bit about our matching beautiful book displays. I see that you
I know.
color code like I do.
I color code, but I color code within what I have or have not read yet.
Ooh, wait, this is another level of I'm like a self-identified OCD, and so I love these kind of little patterns. That's awesome.
hmm Yeah, that's my strategy.
A good one. Do you mind if we just start with a little bit on your background, what it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Sophie Nir. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Abortion Positivity Project and the Abortion Positivity Action Fund. At the Abortion Positivity Project, we work to destigmatize abortion and shift the national abortion narrative away from one controlled by anti-abortion extremists. And at the Action Fund, we do abortion positive legislative advocacy, working to expand abortion access and protect abortion providers, seekers, and facilitators in the access states that patients most rely on for care in this post-Dobbs world.
I'm curious what it is that got you into this and how long you've been at it.
Yeah. So my professional background is very much in the more traditional, like capital D Democratic politics. I worked as a political consultant. I was on the campaign trail, and I ran a PAC that was dedicated to specifically electing quote unquote pro choice Democratic women. And throughout those experiences, I really saw the way that abortion stigma was eroding the progress of our movement from the inside. I really saw the way that people who were well meaning, who really understood themselves to be pro choice, who wanted to see a world where abortion was more accessible, were undermining their own goals, contributing to the abortion stigma that is a sort of real fundamental pillar in the erosion of access. And my co founders and I, who all really came from that professional world, decided that we needed to put a stop to it. And we needed to sort of galvanize our movement, create a framework for. Intentionally destigmatizing abortion, centering the positive impact of abortion, really understanding abortion as moral, good for society, fundamentally important and foundational to the promise of freedom. And that's what we've done with abortion positivity.
It's incredible, and it sounds like an uphill battle considering recent legislation has gone in the opposite direction. I'm curious on something you mentioned where some of the
Mhm.
pro choice advocacy unintentionally maybe became problematic, if I'm understanding that right. Is that because the
Mhm.
term pro choice in and of itself comes with some kind of negative connotation?
So that's certainly one of the things. We understand abortion stigma to be pervasive among both opponents and supporters of abortion, and that's because when we all exist in a society, right? We are socialized to think, speak, and understand things in specific ways and through specific lenses, and that pertains to abortion and to basically everything else as well. And our society really only gives us the option to either oppose abortion or support abortion, but be kind of ashamed of it. And those neither of those options are sufficient. Neither of those options are actually accurate, values aligned for me personally. Promoting and advancing abortion access, which is my goal, creating the world that I want to see, where abortion is safe, legal, affordable, accessible, and stigma free. So at the Abortion Positivity Project, we're kind of creating a third option. The phrase pro choice is definitely inherently problematic, I believe. First of all, the word choice was really focus grouped and selected to distance our movement from abortion. There's a real, we're not for abortion were for choice energy behind the whole thing. And I think that has done such a disservice to abortion patients, abortion providers, abortion access as a whole. Not to mention, it is just plain wrong. It is a stigmatized and negative and really villainizing framework for something that is moral, important, central to freedom and to the experiences of women and all people in our country, and all these very many inherently and fundamentally positive things that I'm sure we will continue to talk about. Also, when we talk about choice, there is no choice without access. And the pro choice movement has failed to guarantee and promote abortion access. So, how can we say, oh, well, someone can choose what they do when, if they actually want to access abortion care or need to access abortion care in the case of a medical emergency, they can't actually access that care? What kind of choice is that?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point, especially in the case of emergencies, which I'm sure we'll get more into the weeds of when and why
Mm-hmm.
people get abortions. If you
Mm-hmm.
had to take the word choice out of it, because that totally makes sense the way that you framed it, where you're like, oh, if we just call it pro choice, then it doesn't actually highlight what's going on and the positive
Mm-hmm.
impact to someone's life who is, for whatever reason, not wishing to continue with a pregnancy or can't continue with a pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that I just never thought of it that way. And I bet that a lot of people will sit with this and really digest it, as I'm sitting here digesting, like understanding where kind of like the shadow side of pro-choice language lays, because it
Mm-hmm.
really is not intuitive until you really
Yeah.
break it down like that.
Yeah. And I'll just add as well that the history of the pro choice movement really has leaned heavily into stigma. And there's
Mhm.
a very, very, very famous quote that was introduced by President Bill Clinton and widely popularized and then adopted actually by Planned Parenthood, that abortion should be, quote, safe, legal, and rare. And that was really the language of the pro choice movement for decades. Obviously, to suggest that something should be rare is to imply that there is something fundamentally wrong with it. When in reality, the number of abortions that should happen are the number of abortions that are wanted or needed. So, that kind of language really commonplace in the public facing sectors of the movement. And abortion stigma really was corrosive, top to bottom.
When we talk about the rare element of it, what do you say then to people who argue that the focus should be on contraception?
Yeah, I would argue that contraception and abortion are not alternatives to one another. Contraception is the alternative to not using contraception. I think contraception is a fabulous thing. On a personal note, the birth control pill has saved my life. I have very serious PMDD, and I think contraception is fabulous. And also, if someone is pregnant and does not want to be pregnant anymore, does not want to continue a pregnancy, or cannot safely continue a pregnancy for the wide variety of reasons that very regularly occurs, abortion is where they abortion is not an alternative to contraception in that case and in that stage of their sort of reproductive journey. In that case, the only alternative to someone being able to access an abortion is to force someone to be pregnant or give birth against their will.
This is a little bit of a zoom out, but I'm
Mhm.
curious, in the case of them wanting it to be quote unquote rare, what are
Yeah.
the actual statistics that you know around abortion care? Where are we at today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, statistic number one in four American women will have an abortion. So, not rare, very common and frequent. Um, the rate of abortion in the United States has gone up since the Dobbs decision, which I think is surprising to a lot of people. But when you make it less safe to be pregnant, people will choose pregnancy less frequently. And that is what we have seen. 54% of abortions in America are done through medication abortion. So it is actually more common for someone to do a medication abortion than a procedural abortion. And medication abortion is I think, very central to why the abortion rate has been able to go up, because people have been able to continue to access care through abortion medication. Um, I can tell you more statistics. The vast majority of American states have at least some abortion restriction on the books, even the states that you would think of as being the most quote unquote pro choice, the most friendly to abortion patients and providers, have laws like viability limits or gestational limits or parental consent laws. The vast majority of states have some version of that. Um, How's that for some stats?
It's great. I think I was only familiar with the 1 in 4 stat, but speaking
Mhm.
to the states where we would assume they would be a little bit more, I don't know if lax is the correct word, but more
Mhm.
access, or what's like a shocking statistic about, let's say, like California or New York or somewhere where you would think it would be totally unrestricted?
Yeah, New York has a 24-week abortion ban. So I live in New York personally. I'm from born and raised in New York, and yeah, here in New York we have a 24-week abortion ban.
Do they have exceptions for
Yes.
when you miscarry?
So there are exceptions to um, like medical necessity. Yes. But also, a lot of states will have the word viability on the books, which is always frustrating to me because that is not a medical word and it does not have a strict medical definition. So it just creates a lot of confusion. But there are multiple states where abortion is legal and available until quote unquote viability, which is sometimes understood to be 24 weeks and sometimes understood to be anything because it's not a real medical word, uh, not a real medical criteria. So yeah,
And which state is the most restrictive, top to bottom?
Texas. That's a tough question because I think there are a few states in our country that I would say move past restrictive into punitive. Um,
Mm.
and I would say Texas is certainly one of those. Oklahoma is fighting for it to be the most restrictive state in the country. I think Texas definitely the most punitive. They have the bounty hunter laws on the books. They are Louisiana as well, constantly trying to legally go after physicians who are trying to help people access care via medication abortion by mail. Yeah,
That's
Texas and Louisiana are really
yeah.
on there. They're really trying to criminalize people who don't even live in the state.
That's really ridiculous because I don't even know how
Mhm.
they have legal authority over someone who's not a resident.
That is, I would say, the great legal question of this era of abortion history. And unfortunately, we will see how it plays out. There is a doctor in New York. Her name is Dr. Maggie Carpenter, who is under criminal indictment. I believe criminal indictment in Louisiana, civil indictment in Texas for very bravely helping people in those states to access the abortion care that their governments are trying to deny them.
It's jarring for me. I moved from California to Texas just this year in January, and
Mhm.
I'm in Austin, so I feel very insulated from the rest of Texas and that side of it because Austin is culturally like such a free place, and so tech forward, and it's just like really jarring to hear about that. But I saw just this morning an article on how these flock cameras that are being installed everywhere, not only are they not actually being used, let's say, to help in cases of like missing children or
Hmm.
prosecuting, violent crimes, whatever else, they're like
Hmm.
predominantly being used to catch women that are going out of state for abortion care.
Yes, these are traffic cameras, for anyone who is not familiar. And yes, California actually has a really interesting law that prevents the sharing of license plate data for situations like this.
Oh wow.
But yes, that is a great example of like punitive law really trying to stalk, harass, trap women and people. Trying to prevent them from leaving the state to get the care that they want and need.
Oh, I realized. So here's a statistic that we didn't touch on yet, but I would love to know if you
Hmm.
have it. What are actually the numbers of people who are, and we'll just call it pro choice right now because that's the word we use, like
Hmm.
what is the actual percentage? Because you hear about like
Yeah.
abortion care being passed in Florida, which is notoriously this very deep red state. So, like,
Hmm.
how is it that a state that is allegedly all very conservative, most of them are voting for abortion care?
Oh, this is my favorite question. So, first of all, the vast, vast, vast majority of Americans support abortion and abortion access. Almost 90% of Americans,
Wow.
about 90% of Americans, support abortion access in at least some cases. Um, Also, the majority of registered Republicans support abortion. The idea of abortion being this like partisan divide is complete nonsense. The majority of Republicans support abortion, and yeah, Florida is a great example because I love to talk about this. That in 2024, November of 2024, on the very same ballot that President Donald Trump won the state of Florida by 13 points, there was a ballot measure that was specifically enshrining would enshrine a legal abortion into the state constitution. So it was a single issue ballot measure that would make abortion legal. They had a 6-week abortion ban, and it would override that. So on the very same ballot, same day, same voter pool, um, that that um, that President Trump won by 13 points, the abortion ballot measure was 14 points. Yes to no. Unfortunately, it did not pass because Florida has a crazy law where you need 60% of the vote for a ballot measure to pass, and they had 57. But 57% of the vote on the same ballot where Donald Trump won by 13 points really tells you everything you need to know about how wrong our national conversation around abortion is, right? The idea that like 50% of Americans are vehemently opposed to abortion is just nonsense. Religious Americans support abortion. Conservative Americans support abortion. Registered Republicans support abortion. Obviously, registered Democrats support abortion. Unaffiliated and independent Americans support abortion on a wide scale. So, abortion overwhelmingly popular in America.
Do you know the history of when it even became a partisan thing? Because maybe it wasn't always
Yes.
affiliated with, Republican. Because now they say it as if it's just like one and the same.
Yes, that's such a great question. So, first of all, for America's first century of existence, abortion was not regulated at all in any way. And that's because until the Civil War, there was a completely separate reproductive healthcare system that was run by midwives that was totally separate from the like formal medical system that was run by white men. So, after the Civil War, there was a sort of state by state campaign to to integrate reproductive health care into the more traditional medical system for the very first time. And with it, there was a state by state campaign to outlaw abortion. And around 1910, there was a abortion ban on the books in every single state individually. Never a national abortion ban, every single state individually. So that that's 1910. What we see statistically is there was a study done in 1930, and 2,700 women had died in the year 1930 alone from inability to access abortion care. And that really laid the ground for Roe v. Wade, which is what we saw in 1973. Um, and Roe v. Wade actually was approved or was passed by a majority Republican appointed Supreme Court justices. For anyone who's not familiar, Roe v. Wade is the Supreme Court case that mandated legalized abortion nationwide. So that was decided by, I believe, a 7-2 majority. That was majority Republican appointed justices. And it really was not until after that, after 1973, when abortion became this contentious political issue. And generally speaking, and I don't want to go too deep because we have limited time and limited attention spans of our lovely listeners, but abortion was really used after the Roe era as this like political rallying cry for like conservatives and sort of other evangelical movements to galvanize voters in support of either racist policies or policies that made rich people richer and poor people poorer. And that's really what we saw for decades, and we're still seeing today.
Yeah, it almost seems like a lot of the anti-abortion rhetoric was embedded into the Republican Party, probably by religion, period, and Christian
Mm-hmm.
nationalism.
Yes, religion and Christian nationalism, and primarily, if not exclusively, after 1976.
What do you think men's role in the conversation should be?
Thank you so much for asking. First of all, something that I really want to highlight is that abortion affects men. Abortion affects everyone, and I'll say I know sometimes I talk about abortion and women because the vast majority of people who have abortions are women, but non-binary people have abortions, trans men have abortions, intersex people have abortions, people of all identifying genders have abortions. So I do think it's important to mention that. And also, you do not need to ever be at risk of needing an abortion for it to affect you. Think about like how a like all of the women that you know, 1/4 of those women have had an abortion or will have an abortion in her lifetime. And abortion affects our communities, our society, our lineage. Think about if there is a man who's, I mean, this sounds like an extreme example, but it does happen. If your wife is not able to access abortion care and she tragically dies because she's not able to access care, that is a huge impact on your life, right? If your mother or a woman in your ancestral lineage is not able to access abortion care, your life turns out very, very differently. These are extreme examples, but I just want to highlight the point and like illustrate what it is that we're talking about, because abortion has a huge impact on our society and therefore on men and on everyone. So, with that said, men need to be vocal, outspoken, and passionate about abortion as a fundamental tenet of freedom for all people, as central to them, their life, their family, their livelihood, their community. Abortion is a fundamental economic issue, it is a personal issue, it is a healthcare issue. And all of these things interact with men and women alike.
I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for just a second.
Please
Because
do.
besides what we already touched on, which is that church has a lot to do with embedding these anti-abortion ideas, do
Mhm.
you think, or maybe even have evidence that there's kind of something more nefarious behind the scenes of why like anti-abortion legislation would want more people, because sometimes conspiratorially I think, oh, they want people in poverty to stay in poverty, that's why they want to force them to have these children that they're unprepared for or don't want or whatever. Do they want just like a bigger workforce of people who are so behind and
Mhm.
trapped in these terrible situations that, like, I mean, an abortion could literally give a woman an opportunity to turn her life around if she's able to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually don't think that's particularly conspiratorial at all. I think that for they're vocal about that. I think JD Vance is a huge proponent of sort of limiting abortion and restricting women's freedom so that men will have more opportunities. Um, he is sort of leading a movement which also has huge TikTok and like manosphere momentum, that like abortion gives women options. Women having options is bad for men. If men are like, by this ideology, entitled to have a life that looks like their fathers and their grandfathers' lives, where they basically had like a wife who was like kind of in domestic servitude, and this ideology suggests that men are sort of entitled to that and that women should not have opportunities outside of the home because that's bad for men. um, they're totally vocal and open about that ideology. They talk a lot about social security and how we need a people and a workforce, and abortion is bad for people having uh, sort of like population growth, which of course it is not the responsibility of any individual person or any individual family to be repopulating society. That's like Handmaid's Tale nightmare shit. So yeah, I think everything you're saying is not conspiratorial, but they're totally open and vocal about it.
Yeah, I think I haven't looked too much because I don't like to give myself nightmares, but I'm pretty sure that's part of the language within Project 2025 is
Hmm.
this idea of, let's have this dialogue which is like so incorrect about the population decline. They love to talk about the population decline, especially in like the
Yes.
more manosphere circles, but it's so silly because then I'm like, oh, well, there's not, the decline is only in very certain specific countries. So if they really were super worried about populations, they could just reform immigration, like if they really wanted to.
Sure. That's such a great point. At the Turning Point USA, like Young Women's Conference or whatever nonsense they're up to, they were selling shirts that said, have more babies than you can afford.
I don't mean to laugh, but like that's it feels like a joke. It feels like, how could you actually put that on and believe in that
Hmm.
that that's a good idea, and then at the same time turn around and bitch about welfare.
Yeah. Have more babies than you can afford. They were like cheering it from the stage and they were selling t shirts with it. And I have one of my dear friends who works as a journalist. I don't want to blow up her spot, but she was there covering it as a journalist and came back with some rough reports.
I bet. Uh,
Hmm.
oh my goodness. Let's get back to, what does reframing the conversation around abortion look like? What would you want to see happen if this was like a step-by-step process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, first and foremost, we need to evaluate the way that we are being taught to think and speak about abortion now. So, that is step one. Ask ourselves, what are the messages that we are being sent about abortion? Are those messages values aligned? Where are those messages coming from? And are they furthering my goals or undermining my goals? Right? Who is this benefiting? That's step one. Step two is really change the way that we talk about abortion, speak about abortion, think about abortion, understand abortion as a part of our society. Um, and then step three is to make this abortion positive framework to be the norm. We say the norm from the water cooler to the legislature. Um, we want to create a culture where the idea of abortion restriction is so far outside of the like sort of cultural understanding that it is unthinkable, right? And we unfortunately talk about how our actions and the way that we talk about abortion in a stigmatized abortion negative way as quote unquote pro choice people really creates a fertile ground for anti abortion policies to flourish because we keep having conversations. For example, like here's an example of a conversation that we keep having. When should abortion be restricted? When should abortion be restricted, right? And maybe the anti-abortion extremists are saying should be restricted from conception, and the quote unquote pro-choice people are saying abortion should be restricted at 24 weeks. What if we, instead of saying when should abortion be restricted, what if we were saying how unthinkable would it be to restrict abortion?
Mm.
Abortion is so important, so foundational to freedom, so fundamental to health and safety, so imperative to the safety of pregnancy for anyone, that the idea of restricting abortion is so beyond unthinkable. If that was the cultural and societal conversation, abortion restriction wouldn't be on the table.
And
That's
what
just
does
an
it
example.
Oh, yeah, and
Sorry.
that's a really good example too, because it just really highlights like where people are at is with their journey is none of anybody else's business. It's such a personal thing, and it's like not an easy decision regardless of these weird kind of arguments. And again, it's like we're talking about it. It's like 10% of people that are just
Mhm.
so fucking loud about it that act like
Yes.
it's like you're getting a punch card or something, like you're just going to Planned Parenthood and you're literally getting abortions for fun. And it's like, that's
Mhm.
not what's happening. It needs to never be a conversation around what the person trying to access abortion care is actually doing it for. Like, I feel like the
Mhm.
reasoning should be dismantled of like looking at what it is, why the why of someone accessing abortion care.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. And the idea of abortion as needing to be justified
Mhm.
is very singular in terms of the way we talk about abortion versus any other healthcare. And the example I always use is like about 2 years ago, I had sinus surgery. And by the way, extremely emotionally difficult decision to get sinus surgery and a very miserable experience for whatever that's worth. But nobody ever conducted a national poll as to should Sophie get sinus surgery. Nobody said, well, why do you need sinus surgery? Have you had sinus surgery before? Yes, I had. I had sinus surgery when I was 17. So I've had 2 sinus surgeries. Is that nobody's evaluating, is that less or more moral or reasonable than if I had had one? Like it is so specific and singular. And then when I see people wear t-shirts that say abortion is healthcare, like abortion is healthcare. And the way we treat abortion is so different than the way we treat any other type of healthcare. And I think it's really important to highlight that. And we have under abortion positivity as like a framework, we talk about the pillars of abortion positivity. Pillar number one is forced birth is evil, and abortion is always moral because it is preventing someone from being forced to give birth or be pregnant against their will. That's pillar number one. And then pillar number two, which I think is extremely relevant here, is that what women and people of marginalized genders want for their own life fundamentally matters. And to suggest that abortion needs to be justified or that some abortions are justifiable and others aren't are to suggest that what a specific woman wants for her own life needs to be justified, or she needs to deserve or earn autonomy and control over her own destiny. And it is fundamental to abortion positivity that that is not the case, that it matters fundamentally what women want for their own lives. And so abortion never needs to be justified.
Amazing. Are there any other pillars?
Oh, yes. The last pillar is that abortion is good for society. Abortion makes society better because it makes society more free, more equitable, more fair, safer, more valuing of health and individuality and all of those other things. And if abortion was to be more accessible, not only would society be better, but it would be a reflection of a better society, right? If society it would be a reflection of the fact that society was more equitable, more fair, more feminist, more advanced in a variety of ways. Yeah, those are your 3 pillars.
I love that. Those are all really hard to argue with for someone that is willing to hear them.
Great. And like just a sort of sidebar is like, if someone asks me like, how do I change the way that I talk about abortion? I would say, really let those 3 pillars guide you in your ideology and the reframing and your language.
Mhm. If you had 5 minutes to talk to someone who believes abortion is murder, how would
Uh-huh.
you change their mind?
What an interesting question. Well, first of all, I will say that is a rarity. The idea of abortion being murder is like really presented in our society as being like a significant pool of like people believing that. And that is not the case. That is a fringe opinion. Um, and what I would say to them is, first of all, like, I'm really sorry that you were taught to think about abortion and the people who have them in such a villainizing and ungenerous way. Um, I know that you can unpack that and we can work towards a abortion positive future together. And I would say, um, it is fundamentally evil to force someone to be pregnant or give birth against their will. Abortion is not trivial. It is not like if someone gets an abortion or not, whatever. Abortion is like completely foundational and transformational in terms of the trajectory of someone's life. And that person's life really does matter. And you have to understand and care about that uh, to really like understand the way that abortion is being misrepresented in our society. Um, and yeah, I think that would be the reframe that I hit them with.
I love that. I would love to hear, have you ever had a conversation or like what's one really memorable conversation that stood out to you where you were able to change somebody's mind?
That's a great question. Oh, well, first of all, actually, going both this question and the last one, if someone is like a anti-abortion crusader, I am not going to waste my time talking to them at all. Like, to be very clear, like I think that there is a big difference between someone who is like vehemently anti-abortion and like is not trying to have a good faith conversation with me and someone who is really indoctrinated by anti-abortion ideology and talking points, but does really want to have a good faith conversation where they want to have an open mind, try to learn things, be open to new ideas. So that's thing one is if someone was like trying to convince me, I'm going to say have a nice day and just leave it at that. I will say that very early on in our organization's existence, we're about 3 years old, and very early on, we were approached by a group of women activists who they had formed like an organization where they were doing activist work, and they had it was like a lot of like older white women who had really like a lot of familiarity with like the language of the pro-choice movement, the kind of ideology of safe, legal, and rare. That was very comfortable to them because it was what they were used to and what they were familiar with. And someone from that group reached out to me and said, can you present to our group about why we should change the language of our mission statement from pro choice to pro abortion? And I did. I put together a presentation for them that actually, like, that presentation is really one of like the building blocks of what is now our flagship training, which I think is cool. And they changed their mission statement. We really were able to bring these ladies around, explain to them why the way that they were thinking about and understanding abortion previously, why that had happened, like what kinds of influences, anti-abortion narrative influences, were informing the way that they have been presented to speak about abortion, how that kind of language, the safe, legal, and rare type language, was not serving any of our goals, why it was important to reframe, how we could reframe, and they were really open and receptive to it and ended up changing their mission statement and removing the word pro-choice and talking about abortion, which I thought was awesome.
That's remarkable. Is there anything we didn't touch on that is accidentally, unintentionally adding to the stigma?
Gosh, there is so much. Um, I could talk about that for a million years, but I think the most important thing um, is the pillars. Is the idea that abortion never needs to be justified, that all abortions are moral, all abortions are valid, no abortions are more or less moral than other abortions because they're all in service of um, limiting the evils of forced birth. Um, I think the most important thing to understand about abortion or about abortion positivity is that you can choose to intentionally destigmatize abortion. You have that power and you should take it up.
I love that so much. Overall, do you think you're optimistic about where things are going?
What an interesting question. Um, in the very long term, yes, and in the medium term, no. I think that there is like a great generational shift that is very slowly uh, happening. I think that in the medium term, we're seeing a lot of legislative harm. We're seeing a lot of harm being perpetuated by like trad wife ideology and manosphere ideology on social media. And that really, really concerns me. Um, and I see a lot of sort of a lot of generational tension and the sort of older generation hoarding power in a way and being very not open to new ways of thinking and not being open to the idea that maybe some of the things that they have perpetuated have actually been harmful in the past, and that worries me as well. So do I feel optimistic in this moment? Unfortunately, maybe not. But we're going to win the long term war, I promise.
That's fair. And it kind of highlights something we haven't really touched on yet in this conversation, but how much of the problem is because we are in this algorithmic nightmare where so many people are being, what's the word I'm looking for? Effectively,
Radicalized?
what's that?
Is it radicalized?
Yes, exactly. So many people are being radicalized where we would have never had this level of radicalization if it wasn't for this weird algorithmic like hell that we're all just sludging through day in and day out, or people who probably were so much more willing to hear other people out and to maybe have a more well-rounded informed opinion, whether it was like pro or anti. It's now become this level of like the extremeness of people's opinions is so scary. And it's like, how do we walk that back without completely dismantling what every tech company has set up their system to look like?
I I think that what we are seeing algorithmically on social media is really scary. Um, really, really scary. And I think the good news algorithmically is that the vast majority of Americans do support abortion. And I actually think like algorithmically, I think that's a really good thing because um, when we see like this sort of radicalization, a lot of it is like sort of small groups of people, but getting pulled into these very dark cycles, which is frightening. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but also social media algorithms really want to confirm the things you already believe. So for that reason, I think the fact that the majority of Americans already support abortion is a very good position to start out in. But yeah, the algorithms are doing scary, 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 scary stuff. And they are promoting a huge amount of misinformation. They really elevate people who don't know anything, who are pretending to be experts. That worries me tremendously. I get like infographics sent to me a lot with false information, and they're like, but it's in this infographic. And I'm like, but anyone with Canva can make an infographic. Like, like there's a lot of sort of degrading of expertise by the algorithms that worries me. Yeah, all very, very scary stuff.
Final question. What is
Yes.
in the near future for the Abortion Positivity Project?
We are working on a lot of really exciting stuff. We have some legislative work and legislative priorities coming up. We are doing, we've been working for a few years now on a legislative and state budget agenda to create and fund a program to train the next generation of abortion providers, because we are seeing an impending abortion provider shortage, and we want to stop that in its tracks. We have really cool legislation that we are working on to stop the harm that unregulated pregnancy centers, also known as crisis pregnancy centers, are causing throughout the country. So a lot of cool legislative work. We also are always working in partnership with podcasters, creators, cultural leaders to bring intentionally destigmatized abortion conversation and content to their audiences. We have a display right now. If you're in Brooklyn or New York, we have a partnership with the Ripped Bodice bookstore that's open right now, where we have a whole display of books that represent abortion, or that have abortion positive representations of abortion. And we are coming to a bookstore near you. We're doing a lot of really cool stuff. So please follow us on Instagram, join our newsletter, and donate or buy merch if you feel so inclined. Yeah, we have a lot of cool stuff coming up.
Incredible. Well, if people want to learn more and they want to support your work, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, so our Instagram is at abortion positivity. Our website is abortionpositivity.com.
Incredible. Well, Sophie Nir, I really appreciate you talking to me today. I learned a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you so, so, so much.
Of course. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye. If you know somebody that would enjoy this episode, feel free to share it with them. And thank you for listening to Galina Ravina Podcastina, the show where I try to be the person my dog thinks I am. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. See you on the next one.